So today we have a great webinar planned for you to guide you on how to sell your transferable skills as a job seeker to access new career opportunities. We will kick off with a short panel discussion with Open Doors, Chime, and Exchange House. Then Risa Muscat from LinkedIn will lead a workshop on identifying and presenting transferable skills effectively, especially on LinkedIn profiles. And finally, we will have breakout rooms facilitated by LinkedIn coaches for practical discussion and identifying and presenting transferable skills. Before we delve into the discussion, I would like to introduce our great panelist. Our first guest is Claudia Mee, is supervisor at Exchange House Ireland, where she provides an educational and training program for members of the traveler community. Claudia, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and the work of your organization?
Well, myself, I'm the CE supervisor here in Exchange House, and we kind of do the CE a little bit differently to other CEs. Ours is 80% education based and 20% work. So we currently at the moment do a level 5 in community development, and I have 15 people on the program at the moment. And we will be working hard towards employability, and we're actually looking at changing the program at the moment into more focusing on the employability skills that people need when they're finishing up here, because some of the lads, they're quite young and they would think they don't have the skill sets to get into employment. So what we do is we actually focus on that, and we work with them in and around that, myself and the team here in the education service. But not just the education service here, we have a youth service as well. We have a family crisis and support and intervention service. We have a mental health team. We have an addiction support here, all under the one umbrella and all in the one building. And we do an awful lot of outreach as well. I'm trying to think of what else. Previously, like I'm 10 years in the community development side, but I actually retrained myself 10 years ago. I went back to college. I'd done the level 5 course and went back to college. I was a chef before all of this. So it was a whole new world as well. So I know how difficult it is to get into employment, especially when you don't have training or any supports or anything like that.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you. Our second guest is Laura Donnellan, team leader of the Explore mentoring programs in Chime. Laura has 28 years of experience in social care, with the majority of that time spent working with deaf and hard of hearing people. Laura, could you please tell our attendees a little bit about yourself, your role in Chime, and the work of your organization?
So I work for Chime, which is a national charity for deaf and hard of hearing people. So we support deaf and hard of hearing people. So deaf, those who are culturally deaf, who use Irish Sign Language to communicate, and those who are hard of hearing. So while the two groups share commonalities, they do differ. So a hard of hearing person would be somebody who would use a combination of speech, lip reading, and assistive technology to communicate. So we have very broad services within Chime. So we would support deaf and hard of hearing people themselves, their families. So from those who are newly diagnosed, on to those who may have an acquired hearing loss. We also support a number of stakeholders like government bodies, those from the voluntary sector and those within the employment sector. We're made up of social workers and family support teams. We have community resource officers, and we have an assistive technology team and a group of audiologists. And then for myself, I'm a mentor and team leader with the Explore mentoring program. So there are 3 mentors at the moment, and we cover the whole of Ireland, which is a big task. And our program looks at supporting deaf and hard of hearing to access, to transition to further and higher education, vocational training and employment. And we recently received funding under the Workability Fund to expand the remit. We were supporting those who are 16 to 25. And now we are looking at supporting those who are 16 plus with no upper age limit and a specific concentration on accessing employment.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. So I shared a bit about myself earlier, but just to add to that, the open doors support all marginalized groups, but my role is to support migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. Based on those interactions, I have seen several common challenges that these groups face to find work in Ireland. For example, not knowing how to transfer their skills from previous position in other countries to roles here in Ireland. They find it difficult to present their skills and experience on their CVs or during the job interview in a way that adds value to company. Some individuals may possess valuable transferable skills gained from previous jobs, volunteering or life experience, but employers may not recognize or value these skills due to lack of formal credentials or experience in Ireland. Claudia, from your perspective, what are the main challenges that your participants face when looking for employment, particularly related to transferable skills?
The main, I'm getting feedback from the lads, so this is from them basically. So the main barriers for them would be their age, would be a big thing because it would be 18 plus, and we also have another program here where it's 16 and up, because there would be early school leavers, unfortunately. But it is their age, discrimination, you know, the fact that they're a member of the traveller community. One big thing, it is discrimination, it's their name. When a lot of them, like I have about 4 or 5 who have excellent CVs, who have done an awful lot of work, but aren't receiving any feedback from when they're applying for a job. In particular, one that I can pinpoint, myself and himself, we applied for, I think, 16 different jobs and didn't receive one. Not even a job, not even a thing to say, look, the position's been filled or anything like that. So, and also from the discrimination, it gives them a knockback. You know, they don't feel that they can go forward. They don't feel that they can move forward or try anything. So it's barriers that have been put in their way from previous, and barriers that can be put in their way from themselves as well. And the education as well. And that's kind of where we come in to kind of help towards that and work towards them goals as well. Trying to remember everything. I have an awful lot more. I'm sorry, my mind's gone.
It's fine, sure. Laura, how about you? How do you think, what are some of the key challenges faced by the people you work with?
So I suppose one of the obvious one is around disclosure, that some deaf and hard of hearing people are afraid to disclose then, especially at the initial application stage. Obviously for sign language users, they'll have to inform the potential employer if they need an interpreter. We just did our own research as well ourselves when we looked at in relation to transferable skills. So we looked at the research that's out there, but we also did a survey among the staff that work within Chime, our deaf and hard of hearing staff, and then some from our own experience. And one of the things, and maybe Claudia, you might have similarities here, is that a lot of the feedback was that they don't realise that for some, now I'm talking it's very broad, but for some, they didn't realise the skills that they actually bring to the workplace. Yeah, you find that too, Claudia.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that was one of the things. And then maybe need a little prompting. They're like, oh yeah, I do that, you know, and then we were able to list all the different skills that they do bring. So I think it might be a lack of awareness, or they haven't thought about it. And maybe I know, so when I'm talking about deaf and hard of hearing, you know, they're very broad in terms of communication modes and in terms of level of deafness. But I know, let's say from interacting with those who are hard of hearing, that maybe they spend a lot of their life trying to mask it. So they don't want people to know. And really then they feel, oh, I can't apply for that job because I find it difficult to use the phone. And we do see that a lot. So one is around awareness of the skills that they can actually bring to the workforce. And if you're not aware, then you're not going to sell yourself in the same way. So I'm sure it's the same, Claudia.
It is actually, that's the transferable skills, all of that, like, and for, I'm after remembering now, so it's transportation, accommodation as well, are big issues for them. So some of where the sites would be and things like that, it can be quite difficult even with public transport and that as well. But as you said, it is actually kind of hiding who they are in some senses, for not for all, for some. And that in itself isn't, it's not a nice thing, but still in this day and age of 2024, you know, it shouldn't be like that, but unfortunately it is.
Yeah, thank you.
I think as well, if you don't mind me just adding, so sometimes it's not about the individuals and maybe them not being aware. Sometimes it's the employer. So while because everything can be, every barrier that, well, most barriers that exist can be overcome with maybe minor adjustments. And what we're finding through the experimenting program is that employers are not aware of all the different supports, from assistive technology to things like you know, using how to use an interpreter, to the text relay service. So a lot of deaf and hard of hearing might be nervous about that whole communication, you know, within the workplace, and maybe a fear of using the phone, for example. But there are technologies out there that do help and can really support them, and it's just about making those minor adjustments. So employers kind of lack awareness around that.
It's the same when we have ITM, and they have an apprenticeship kind of program there to help young people get into apprenticeships, and there's incentives and all of that, and a lot of the people that we would work with mightn't know about that, and that can stem from like not having Wi-Fi on the sites, things like that, and they're not able to get that connection, so they find out by coming in here to us or going to ITM themselves as well. But because we're a bigger organization, they kind of tend to come here, and then we redirect them or refer them to wherever they need to be, you know. But it's the knowledge, the not knowing that there is actually things there. And the program that ITM run as well is helps the employers work with the apprentices as well. So it's a two-way system with them, which is great. It's only a new thing that they've started, but hopefully it'll get up on its feet and it'll work well.
Okay, thank you for your insights. It's very interesting. At Open Doors, particularly with migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, we see several transferable skills that can be very useful for a range of roles. Just by moving to a new country, by choice or not, individuals have demonstrated the ability to adapt to new environments, cultures, and circumstances, which they are valuable skills at any workplace. Participants frequently demonstrate problem-solving skills developed through their experience navigating complex systems, overcoming barriers, and finding creative solutions to challenges they encountered. Laura, what types of transferable skills do you commonly observe in your participant that can be useful for various roles?
Similar to what you just said, Lydia. So that problem solving, you know, deaf people, they navigate a non-deaf or a hearing world. So every day, from they leave their house to going to the shop, to going to work, to connecting with people, they face lots of barriers in terms of communication. And it's a challenge, but they are great communicators, whether the person knows sign language or not. And that's what I even see with my deaf colleagues, great communicators, able to get their point across, think out of the box thinking. So if somebody doesn't have sign language, to think of other ways to explain themselves. I think they are very good at adapting to different situations. Problem solving is a huge thing. And they're really adept at it. And I think then when we look at the research, because I was looking at different research to this, and it talks about all the how the impact of having a deaf person on staff. You know, they tend to be more loyal. They tend to be create a better or more organized environment, because you have to book the interpreter in advance. You know, the interpreter needs to see, you know, what's going to be discussed. So it's such benefit for the work environment.
Thank you, Claudia. And in your experience, what transferable skills do you frequently notice among participants that can be beneficial across different positions and industries?
I have to say the critical thinking is one of the big ones. The adaptability to the different environments, the whole lot. The communication skills are, you know, extremely good, I have to say. They have, most of them that I'm working with currently at the moment would have quite a high level with computer skills that they've learned themselves, and leadership skills, very much so with the leadership skills, and team working. That's one of the massive things that I see every day. Like, they work so well as a team in here, and they support each other throughout, and they don't even notice that they're doing it. And they don't, when I brought these questions to them, they're there's nothing. But when I start kind of pulling it out a little bit more from them, then you kind of realize, no, actually we have this, you know, the leadership skills, the adaptability to the environment that they're in, the communication, the creativity, you know. And it's, for them, they were surprised that there was so much, but, you know, they don't see it, unfortunately. But maybe they are now. With doing this, it's actually highlighting to them how much their skills are there and how much they can do.
And I think the IT skills is also and use of assistive technology for deaf and hard of hearing people, because they were using video call before COVID came, before any of us were using it, because they're able to sign, and then there's no barrier then in the communication.
Yeah. Thank you, Claudia and Laura. So we actually have a great example from an Open Doors participant who is a graphic designer, originally from Ukraine. She faced a lot of challenges trying to find work here in Ireland. After trying to get a job in the same field for a while, she recognized that she had some skill gaps for what happened in the Irish market. So she decided to explore alternative career path. She actively pursued opportunities in customer service and administrative roles, showcasing her ability to effectively communicate and organize workflows, which lead her to start a new career in Ireland. We're happy to this participant. But maybe Laura and Laura, do you have anything to add before we wrap up? Any relevant story, advice, or insight for our attendees?
I think I was thinking of the different stories, and it's usually small little things, but they're important. So I just think of one of my colleagues. He's a board member and on a different for a different organization. And deaf people tend to be very visual because obviously sign language is a physical language. It's a language of the hands. And generally, when people come into a meeting, we're all yapping. For hearing people, we're all yapping, we're talking, we're a bit distracted. He's sitting waiting for the interpreter to come so he can follow everything that's going on. And they had the presentation up, and he noticed a major error in the presentation, because he's very visual. He's sitting, he's watching everything, whereas I mightn't be paying as much attention. And it was something that could have been potentially very embarrassing, and he was able to highlight it. But he said those sort of things happen all the time. And yeah, it's great to see. So it's that attention to detail piece.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your participation. It was very great to have you both on board. Now I would like to introduce our speaker, Raisa Musket, Principal Customer Service Manager with 9 years of experience at LinkedIn. She specialized in working with recruitment teams on their talent acquisition strategy when it comes to finding the right talent for their companies on LinkedIn. Rai, I'll hand it over to you now.
Great, thank you. And thanks for the introduction. It's great to be here today. Hope everyone's doing well on Thursday. And I'll go ahead and start sharing my slides, and watch now that I actually am sharing it. It's going to bring up the slides that we were supposed to present at the beginning. Oh, wait, no, it's still being a little bit difficult with me. And let me just, great. I am going to actually just do it this way because it's sharing an older version, but let me just bring up the actual presentation. Can everyone see, and is it in the presentation mode? Great. Okay, I see that thumbs up from Lydia. And again, we want to keep this as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions throughout, feel free to throw it in the chat. Lydia and Talita, just let me know when there's questions that pop up. I can't see it immediately on my screen. But what I want to talk about today is kind of bring that conversation of, hey, how can you promote yourself and essentially use the skills that you have to help maybe direct you towards a different type of role or a different type of career, and not essentially recreate the wheel. I think the conversation that we just had, or that you just heard from, was really kind of like highlighted the way that you can talk about the skills that you have and the experiences that you've had, and potentially bring them over and highlight that you actually be qualified for a different type of role or something different. So what I wanted to go through a bit is talk to you a little bit about how the recruiter thinks about skills first, because currently what I do, and what Lydia said, is I work with recruiters day in and day out, and I help them use LinkedIn to recruit for candidates just like you for their open roles. And one conversation that they're starting to have is they're realizing that there's a lot of qualified candidates out there. However, they might not be in the exact role that they're hiring for. But as we've just said, they have the skills, they exhibit the skills that show that they can be successful in that role. So a lot of recruiters these days are starting to flip the way that they search, where they're putting in skills when they're doing searches versus job title or having them be in a certain industry, which was a bit how things were done historically. And what this means for you is that this is a great opportunity to take advantage of that shift in recruiting, because it's a way for you to highlight your skills and showcase that, yes, I have these skills, but they also can be relevant to another role, or they could be relevant within another industry that I'm not currently in. And to just kind of highlight LinkedIn overall, this is kind of our overall ecosystem. We have 1 billion plus members, which we hit last year and we're very excited about. But more importantly, if you look over to the right, we have 39,000 skills on LinkedIn that members are exhibiting on their profiles day in and day out. So there's a lot of information that LinkedIn has to understand a bit more around, hey, what skills are relevant to certain roles, what skills can be relevant in one industry and then also incredibly relevant in another. And because of the fact that we have that information, we've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to start to kind of figure out where there's overlap within certain skills. And as we've been doing that, we've been slowly trying to break down different roles and what types of skills are in certain roles. And then from there, look more into that overlap. Obviously, we're doing that more to help recruiters, but I think it's important for you to see these slides because it talks a little bit about how you can think a bit more around breaking down the skills that you have in your day-to-day role and kind of breaking your role down to skills versus just that overall tagline around what you do within your role. And then when I go to the next slide, this is highlighting where LinkedIn is looking at all these skills and where we get all this information. So we're pulling skills data from LinkedIn member profiles. We're looking at LinkedIn learning courses and what courses people are taking. And then also we're looking at the job postings on LinkedIn. So there's a lot of work that LinkedIn is doing to help recruiters find talent by using skills. And so today what we're going to talk about is how you can almost play around with that and put skills on your profile to be more marketable to those recruiters who are now using skills to do searches on LinkedIn. So what that means for you is thinking a little bit more around what you're putting on your LinkedIn profile. So what I'm showing here is actually a little bit of a back end of what recruiters use on LinkedIn to search for members for their open roles. So it's super important that when you start going and thinking about what you're putting on your LinkedIn profile, that you are highlighting all of the skills that you have and making sure that they're put on your profile, because again, recruiters are going to be doing searches and looking for that, and then you'll be popping up in that search. And I'm actually going to go back to the slide that was talking a bit about job descriptions, because I know one question that constantly is given is, well, I'm maybe looking at I'm currently working in customer service, but I really want to get into a finance role, for example. What what are they looking for in a finance role? What are how do they phrase it? And the best thing that you can do is you can go and look at jobs, and you can take a look at open roles for the types of jobs that you're interested in, and really take a look at what's on that job description. And if there are certain skills or certain uh, like keywords that you actually have yourself within the experience that you've had, pull that from your profile and start to make a list of all of those different things that you actually have that are relevant to that role. Because again, recruiters are putting in and filling out these job descriptions. And I think it's super helpful for you to kind of pull from what's already there if you have that, and then start putting that on your LinkedIn profile, and also thinking about, okay, great, they want to have someone who's really great at communications, for example. What experiences do I have that would highlight that? When have I worked with a client or with an internal partner where we've had a challenge and we've had to work through it? So it can help kind of trigger a bit of like, oh, I've had similar experiences. It might not be the exact same, but there are some ways that I can change that up a bit and make it relevant to the role that I'm looking for. And I see that a question came up.
Sorry, I just allowed his mic.
Yeah,
There you
yeah,
go.
yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I have one question that's related more to the new trend that I heard. Like, I noticed that many CV builders, let's say like that, they encourage you not to write like general-based skills like analytics or research. They encourage to write like more advanced, more with not so generalized, let's say like that. How do you work? How do you deal with these things in LinkedIn and with people's profiles?
Yep. So what I would say to that is, I think it's important that if you have hard, like technical skills that you want to be promoting, I think it's important that you still have it on your LinkedIn profile. I think that the ones that are more that you want to essentially flaunt more or highlight more, you should be putting within that experience section within the job that you're currently working in or your previous experience, and use that skill and that keyword and then elaborate a bit more around what you've been doing. So that way the recruiter will know, okay, great, they have these really hard, important skill sets that we're looking for. But I also know that looking at their skills section of their profile, they also have these as well. So I wouldn't like necessarily not include a skill because it's not seen as like a hard skill or whatnot. But I think that you can promote the harder or the more prevalent skills within that experience section, that in that your experience that highlights that you have that skill, but then make sure that you still have that skill highlighted and put into the skills part of your profile. And we'll go live and I'll show you what that kind of looks like when you're actually in your LinkedIn profile. But I think especially for those of you who are looking for roles right now and are trying to make a change, it is better to have more on your LinkedIn profile when it comes to skills, because it will just help make you more searchable and it will help you come up in more searches from a recruiter standpoint. And then bringing that to life a bit more. So here is the example of a of where you can put that experience. This is on our mobile app, but essentially when you are filling out your profile, you'll be able to highlight the description, which I just talked about, and then add skills. And along with that, like I said previously, when you have more skills, you're going to have more job matches. So you'll actually, when you're looking at those job descriptions on LinkedIn, you'll get a quick look at, okay, great, I'm 50% match for this job. Why am I 50% match for this job if I actually feel that I have all the qualifications. And then that's a good example of you going in and looking at that job description and making sure that you're putting in the key points from that job description in your profile if you exhibit those skills as well. And the nice thing too is all of you are going to get access to LinkedIn Premium. And with that, we'll highlight even further of how well matched you are for that role, and also where you fall in regards to the other applicants that are applying. So it's a really great way just for you to kind of say, I think that I'm a better fit than this is letting me on. And it could mean that your profile isn't exhibiting that you're a better fit because you're leaving some details out.
Ray, we have someone with their hand up. I might just
Yeah, go ahead.
turn on their mic. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Kieran, I allowed you to turn on your mic. If your mic isn't working, Kieran, if you want to use the chat function, we can read out your question there. Yeah, I think we can keep going, Ray.
Okay. And I actually see one in the chat from Susie. So it's what would be the key skills recruiters look for, and what are the words/terms that you would use not to duplicate skills? For example, some recruiters could interpret detail-oriented and organization as similar skills, but other recruiters would see them as two completely different skills. So I think with that, it's thinking a little bit more around what role you're trying to go for. I think like usually if you're looking for similar roles or within similar industries, they tend to use the same terms over and over again. But with that being said, I think what you could do, kind of like what I said earlier, is maybe put in detail oriented when you're filling out that just experience section, but then you could still put organization as a skill. So it is on your LinkedIn profile. So it is something that you can be tagged for if, let's say, another recruiter put in organization. And we do have behind the scenes a bit of like what we call a skills taxonomy. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning, where we're doing a bunch of research behind the scenes to figure out what skills are relevant to what roles, industry, and then from there, how can they transfer between both? So we're continuously updating that taxonomy. And what you'll notice is, and when I actually go in to show how to update your profile, when you start adding in skills, we're going to give recommendations of other skills as well. And that's a sign that we see those as skills that are synonymous to what you're putting in, or within kind of the same, that these skills are kind of tend to be matched together or put together. And I think up on this, so here I have a slide, and again, we'll be sharing these slides with you. But what we've also done is we've obviously have that skills match feature, which I talked about on the job description, but we also have a career explorer tool. And this will give you a little bit of insight as well into what are some transferable skills between different types of titles, different types of industries. And it will help potentially show, okay, great, I'm maybe looking a little bit more at some of those finance roles, and I'm noticing that they're using this term more consistently. I'll use this one in my experience, throw it in the skills, and the Career Explorer tool can actually help validate that a bit more. So I'll show that in a second around what that looks like, but I think it's kind of up to your gut and based off of a bit around the research that you've done too, around the roles that you've been looking at. Perfect. And so the next thing that I wanted to just remind everyone is highlighting your skills on your LinkedIn profile and resume, and essentially talking a bit more around what you're really doing within your role. And when we talk about skills on LinkedIn, we talk about explicit skills and implicit skills. So explicit skills are exactly what we've just talked about, where you're going in and putting in specific skills on your profile to be marketable to recruiters. Along with that, though, we also realize that there's certain terms that can exhibit certain skills. So working well within a high pressure environment is potentially a keyword or a skill that is something that we would probably match to the ability for like communication skills. So there are things that we are doing when looking at your profile to say, okay, great, we see that there's enough information from what they're telling us in the profile to highlight to us that they potentially exhibit a certain skill set, even if it's not implicitly or explicitly put on your profile, but if it's talked about in the way that you talk about your role. So again, it's like that idea that LinkedIn's trying to help you as much as possible, but we do need you to give us that information and share us with what you're doing within that role for us to be able to make those inferences. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go live and highlight a little bit more around what this all looks like. So the first thing that I'm going to show is let's bring it up, is the Career Explorer. So I am going to share this link with all of you. And it's something that has been created by our LinkedIn Economic Graph team. So when I was chatting about the fact that LinkedIn is doing all this work behind the scenes to kind of figure out, hey, what are transferable skills? This is an example of where that work comes to light. So what you can do is you can actually put in a current role or try to find a title that's synonymous to your current role, because obviously we don't have every title on there since some of them can be synonymous. But you can enter a job and then you can see, okay, great, these are skills that we see for a food server. So it actually really cleanly breaks down a role that might not historically be seen as a corporate role, for example, in this situation, but are all skills that you could potentially put on your profile that are now relevant to a corporate role. And you can see the certain job matches that also fall for food server. And you can see that the transition, like you can see the transitioning from bartender to food server. This is what you'd have to do. These are the skills that you have to play around with. But this is an example of like highlighting a bit more around the skills that you can be putting in and how we see skills. I might put in a different job and put in, let's see if I put in finance manager, for example. So this is, again, a quick breakdown of what we see for skills that are connected to a finance manager. And then if you wanted to move into a different type of role within finance, for example, this is what we would be recommending. But this is all available to you, and you can play around and figure out, okay, cool, what skills do I currently have within a certain role? And I think the last one I'll throw in is customer service representative. So again, all these different skills, you can play around and see the skills that are relevant within these types of roles, and then get an idea of, all right, what role are we wanting to move into, and how do we play around with these different types of roles? I think the nice thing about this too is it gives you a really clean list of, again, what skills you could be putting on your LinkedIn profile that are relevant to roles that you're interested in getting involved in if you are, or that you're interested in applying to, if you have those skills within the role that you're currently on. So moving over to, I'm going to use my profile as an example. So this is my LinkedIn profile. And the nice thing about your LinkedIn profile is that it makes it really easy for you to talk about your role and exhibit those skills that you want to talk about. So if I go to add profile section, this is going to bring me a quick list of everything that additional things that I could add to my LinkedIn profile to help highlight skills. So this is always a great place to start, to check it out and say, okay, great. Have I put in my education? Have I added a position? Have I added in the skills that I've talked about? And this is the example of, let's say I am already getting suggested skills based on my profile. So basically what it's doing here is it's saying, okay, great, we've looked at your profile and we've also seen that these are some other skills that are synonymous with your role and your experience. It gives you a great kind of momentum to add additional skills to your profile. The other thing that you can do as well is you can start typing in a role. And all of a sudden, we're going to start giving you examples of those skills. So, and I'm actually going to redo that, discard. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go down to the bottom here for the skills section and put that plus and put in customer service. And you're going to see too that as I start typing in customer service, for example, it's giving a bunch of synonymous skills to customer service that are popping up as well. So it can give you kind of additional insight into other skills that people are putting on their profile and that we're seeing on job descriptions that exhibit this skill set. If I could go ahead and save it if I wanted to, I can also add some of the suggested based on my profile and then connect it to a role that I'm currently in. And all of this is a really quick and easy way to just highlight to that recruiter, hey, I have these skills. This is where I've exhibited the skill. And it's a kind of quick way for you to get some additional inspiration around what skills you can put on your LinkedIn profile. With that being said, the next bit that I wanted to highlight is that area of your about section. And I think that this is a section that can be sometimes overlooked around filling it out fully, like what should I be putting in there? I know is a constant question. And I always say that this is actually a great way for you to tell a bit more of a story around your skills. So this is your top card of, hey, at, like, for example, I have talked about what I'm doing at LinkedIn, but if you look at it, there's a few different keywords and skills that I've actually embedded within the about section, which highlights a bit more around my career and talks a bit more around the skills that I currently have. It's not being explicit, like I have this bullet point list of skills, but it tells a story. And I think this is a really great section for you to kick off your profile and tell a story of your skills, because the skills are obviously going to be embedded in that story. And then from there, you can go down into that experience section and you can start building out that experience section a bit more and talking about what skills you've exhibited there. So for me, for example, I need to build out my profile, but I haven't edited it in a while. And if I were to edit it, what I would do is I would click on that edit notification, and then I would start putting in the job description area, I would do a quick little overview around what I'm doing in my role, but then do more of an explicit bullet point around what skills I have exhibited in that role and also what achievements I've had. Because I think one big thing that recruiters want to see with a skill is also more of that kind of so what. So great, you've had sales experience, but how many maybe clients were you managing, or if it was something internal, what were you managing there, and was there what monetary amount was involved? If it's customer service, you could say I took 100 calls a day and helped mitigate challenges within this time period. So think about what kind of, for lack of a better term, like what goals or what results were tied to the skills that you had in that role. And when you're filling out the description within that experience section of the role, talk about that as well. So it's a way for that skill to have a little bit more foundation, I guess you could say, because you're exhibiting that I not only exhibited this skill, but I also met this goal within that skill based off because of what the role entailed, or what was within the role. And this is a really helpful way for you to have a profile that will be easy for a recruiter to read. And then also, of course, gives you all that ability for you to highlight that you have experience using those skills within your current role or your previous roles. Again, here, this is also going to give that skills section, which I just showed before, where it's going to give you the ability to quickly throw in additional skills. And if you had any additional media or anything else that you wanted to highlight from that role, you can do that all within the experience section. So again, just additional examples of how you exhibited those skills. The other thing that also is overlooked a bit in regards to how you can exhibit additional skills is your school experience. So if any of you have recently taken a certification, if you have a license in a certain area, especially within the field that you're trying to get into, make sure to include that within the license and certification area. Because again, it's another spot for you to highlight those skills, which will then help you be more marketable to a recruiter when they're doing a search on LinkedIn. But it doesn't go overlooked too, because again, it's something that you can tie to highlighting. Again, not only am I saying that I have this skill, but I have an example that proves that I have this skill, which is super important. And then from an education standpoint, you also can include any projects that you've done. And I actually, if I'm going to go to the top again, I don't actually have anything highlighted, but if I go to the courses bit, so if I recommend it, I go to courses, for example, I can actually highlight the course that I've done and then like what it's been associated with, and then highlight more within that course as well. So a few different areas for you to back up that you exhibit those skills, especially if they are, of course, skills that are relevant to a role or an industry that you want to change into. Any questions with that? Because I know that was a bit more go live and highlighting about how we can bring that to life. Karen, I see you have a question.
Kieran, I have allowed you to turn on your mic, and you can also use the chat function in case that's not working. I think we might be having some technical issues there.
No worries. Oh, he had to drop due to laptop issue. No worries. If you want to type the question, feel free to. And what I'll do is I'm going to show a few more slides. Oh wait, no, just Karen still has their hand raised. I'm going to show a few more slides, and what these slides are showing are some examples of individuals who made a bit of a transition. So these are all different case studies, and it shows that it really does work where people are able to make that transition from hospitality to human resources. And exactly kind of what we just talked about is Megan, what she did is she went ahead and she updated her profile to reflect that she had the skills endorsed by her former employer, and that she had the skills that also were relevant to a job within human resources. And along with that, the other thing that she also did, which was really smart, is she got references. And references are part of your LinkedIn profile where you can have your current manager or a current coworker also validate that you have those skills that are relevant to that role that you want to get into. And that's another section within your LinkedIn profile that you can build out. And when you can easily go ahead, type in their name if you're connected with them on LinkedIn, and ask for that reference. There's a few more examples that we have. So these are all kind of highlighting a bit more around how someone changed their pathway to becoming a project manager because they had customer experience as a skill set, and they were able to kind of twist that into working internally. So I'm going to share all of these examples with you as the follow-up because I think it provides more of that, hey, this is tangible for me because someone else has done it before. And it's really what they did is they did that work to break down what they're currently doing and what skills they do have, and kind of like breaking down that barrier of not just tying it to a title, but tying it to themselves. And like, I have these skills that I carry with me, and that means that I can carry it with me into another industry, into another role, because I have those skills that are relevant, not because I have that title that essentially could, for lack of a better term, is holding me back. So I'll share all these with you, of course. And if you also have a chance, I do highly recommend that you go to that Career Explorer and play around with that a bit because it will give you an idea of additional skills that you can be highlighting on your profile. And some of these members actually went ahead and took a look at that as well to kind of get some inspiration on how they could change their profile and how they could really exhibit that they have those skills for a different type of industry or role. And I know we have about 3-ish minutes left. And Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry about the presentation being larger. Again, we'll share this with all of you, so you'll be able to view it on your own. But at the end of the presentation, there's just a reminder of ways for you to build out your LinkedIn profile. We already went live, so I don't need to go through all that again. However, I do really encourage all of you for you to go ahead and start breaking down your current skills and looking at those job descriptions of the roles that you're currently interested in. And then also, the other thing as well is maybe doing a little bit of research around what companies you're looking at and seeing what they're putting on their company pages too. Because again, that can give you another idea of what skills they're looking for or what type of what type of employer they're looking for as well. And it just gives you additional insight into ways that you can tweak your LinkedIn profile.
Okay, I hope you all enjoyed the webinar and that you learned something useful to help you in your job search. I would like to thank our partners again, LinkedIn, Chime, Exchange House, ILC Interpreters. It was a pleasure working with you all on this. Thanks, everyone, and I hope to see you again at our new event.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.